I never expected to find New York's most notorious crime lord sprawled across the hood of my car at 2 a.m., blood trickling from his temple and reeking of whiskey. The man whose name made hardened criminals tremble was now mumbling incoherently as blue and red lights flashed in the distance. My 8-year-old daughter, Mia, was sleeping at my neighbor's apartment while I worked the late shift at his downtown restaurant, a job I'd taken 6 months ago, without knowing who truly owned the place. The approaching sirens meant police, and police meant questions no one who valued their life would answer about Nikolai Petrov. Making a split-second decision I'd surely regret. I somehow maneuvered his hulking frame into my passenger seat, his expensive suit soaking my worn upholstery with rain, and what I hoped wasn't someone else's blood. "You better not die in my car," I muttered, peeling away from the curb seconds before a patrol car rounded the corner. The address I found in his wallet belonged to a sleek high-rise overlooking Central Park, where the doorman's eyes widened in shock before quickly composing himself. "Ms. Collins, we've been expecting you," he said smoothly, though I'd never set foot in this building before tonight, and I definitely hadn't told him my name. "Apartment 3001, he continued, pressing the penthouse button before stepping back from the elevator. "And Ms. Collins, this never happened." The doors closed on his knowing look, leaving me alone with the unconscious man who signed my paychecks and reportedly had half the NYPD in his pocket. The penthouse spanned the entire top floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing Manhattan's glittering skyline. Despite its grandeur, the space felt sterile and unlived in. No photographs, no personal touches, just expensive furniture that looked like it had never been used. I managed to drag Nikolai to a black leather couch that probably cost more than 6 months of my rent. His breathing seemed steady, but the gash on his temple needed cleaning, sending me searching through marble bathrooms for a first aid kit. As I gently cleaned the wound, his eyes suddenly snapped open, ice blue and instantly alert, despite the alcohol I could still smell on his breath. His hand shot up, fingers wrapping around my wrist with surprising strength, stopping just short of causing pain. "Who sent you?" he growled, his voice carrying none of the slurring from earlier. The transformation was so immediate, I wondered if he'd been faking unconsciousness since I loaded him into my car. "No one sent me," I replied, keeping my voice steady despite my racing heart. "I'm April Collins. I work at your restaurant downtown." His grip loosened slightly, but those calculating eyes never left my face, searching for deception. "The hostess," he said finally, recognition flickering across his features. "With the little girl who draws pictures." The fact that he knew about Mia sent a chill down my spine that I fought hard not to show. I pulled my hand away, gathering the bloody gauze. "You were passed out on my car. The police were coming and I didn't think either of us wanted to answer their questions. Now if you're okay, I really need to get home to my daughter." The mention of Mia seemed to trigger something, a flash of emotion across his otherwise guarded expression. "It's late," he stated flatly, glancing at the wall of windows where dawn was beginning to break over the city skyline. "You shouldn't be driving tired. Take the guest room." Before I could protest, he stood in one fluid motion that belied his supposed drunkenness and disappeared down a hallway, leaving me alone in the massive living room. I sent a quick text to my neighbor Rose that I'd be late, and exhaustion won over caution, as I found myself sinking into sheets that felt like clouds. I woke to sunlight streaming through windows I didn't recognize, and the disorienting realization that I was in Nikolai Petrov's penthouse. The events of the night before came rushing back as I checked my phone, 3 missed calls from work, and a text from Rose saying Mia was fine but asking where I was. The smell of coffee guided me to the kitchen where I froze at the doorway, unable to process the scene before me. Nikolai Petrov, the man whispered about in fearful tones throughout Manhattan, stood at a gleaming countertop in a simple black t-shirt, making breakfast. "Your uniform was stained," he said, without turning around, somehow sensing my presence. "I had it cleaned and left clothes for you in the bathroom." His tone was matter-of-fact, as if having a single mother who rescued him from police custody in his kitchen was an everyday occurrence. "Why did you help me last night?" he asked, finally turning to face me with 2 plates of what appeared to be perfectly cooked eggs and toast. His ice-blue eyes were clear of any hangover, the cut on his temple now just a thin red line. "I don't know," I admitted, accepting the offered coffee with hesitation. "Maybe because I've seen you give second chances to people at the restaurant when other bosses wouldn't." The words surprised even me as they left my mouth. I hadn't consciously registered those observations before. Nikolai studied me with that same intense gaze from the night before. Most people in this city either want something from me or fear me too much to look me in the eye. You did neither. There was something almost like respect in his voice. I need to get home to my daughter, I said, ignoring both the untouched breakfast and the way his observation made something flutter unexpectedly in my chest. And then to work, where I'm already late. The reality of my life, responsibilities, bills, and a child who depended solely on me felt worlds away from this penthouse. A hint of a smile touched his lips. You're not late. I own the restaurant, remember? Take the day off. Paid. He slid a set of car keys across the counter. My driver is waiting downstairs to take you home. The sleek black SUV with tinted windows that dropped me at my modest apartment building in Queens drew curious stares from my neighbors. I hurried inside with my head down, still wearing borrowed clothes that were simple but undeniably expensive, feeling like I'd stepped between worlds. Rose gave me a knowing look when I collected Mia, clearly assuming I'd spent the night with a man, which technically wasn't wrong. He must be something special to put that look on your face, she whispered, as Mia gathered her things, misreading my flustered expression entirely. My tiny apartment felt especially cramped after the sprawling penthouse, but Mia's excited chatter about her sleepover and the drawings she'd made filled the space with the warmth that had been noticeably absent in Nikolai's home. This was my reality, not penthouses and dangerous men with ice blue eyes. Mommy, who gave you these clothes? Mia asked with a child's directness, her fingers tracing the fine material of the borrowed blouse. They look like princess clothes. Her innocent observation made the events of the previous night seem even more surreal. I was formulating a suitable explanation when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Your car has been repaired and returned to your building's parking lot. Thank you for last night. NP. Attached was a photo of my old Honda, now sporting what appeared to be a new paint job and fixed dents I couldn't have afforded to repair. Just someone I helped. I finally answered Mia, tucking my phone away with shaking hands. Sometimes when you help people, they want to thank you. Little did I know how profoundly that simple act of kindness would change both our lives by morning. I returned to work the following evening expecting awkwardness, or worse, to find myself suddenly unemployed. Instead, the restaurant manager nervously informed me that I'd been reassigned and handed me a new uniform. Not the standard black dress, but a tailored blazer and slacks. Mr. Petrov requested you personally handle VIP reservations and special events, he explained, unable to meet my eyes. It comes with a significant pay increase and more regular hours. The other staff watched with barely concealed curiosity and, from some, resentment. The promotion made no sense unless viewed as payment for silence, which ignited an unexpected spark of anger. I didn't want to be bought off. I'd helped him because it seemed right in the moment, not for some transactional gain that made me no better than the sycophants who surrounded him. When Nikolai himself appeared at the restaurant that night, the entire atmosphere changed. Staff straightened, conversations hushed, and even regular customers seemed to sense the shift in energy as he moved through the space with predatory grace. He made his way directly to my new station, ignoring the manager hovering anxiously nearby. "How's your daughter?" he asked without preamble, catching me completely off guard. The question seemed genuine rather than threatening, which was somehow more unsettling. "She's fine. Confused about the car," I replied cautiously, keeping my voice professional despite the curious glances from nearby tables. "You didn't need to do that. Or this." I gestured subtly to my new uniform and position. Nikolai's expression remained unreadable, but something flickered in those ice blue eyes. "I don't do anything I don't want to do, April. The position suits your capabilities better than seating guests." Before I could respond, his attention shifted to something behind me, his entire demeanor changing instantly. 3 men in expensive suits had entered, their body language setting off immediate alarm bells, even before I noticed the barely concealed bulges under their jackets. "Get to the back room," Nikolai ordered quietly, all traces of our almost normal conversation vanishing. I should have listened, should have retreated to safety, but something made me hesitate as the men approached Nikolai. Their conversation was low but intense, with undercurrents of threat flowing beneath superficially polite words about territory and arrangements. The tension broke when one man's gaze landed on me, his eyes narrowing with calculated interest. "New staff, Petrov? She seems special." The way he said the word made my skin crawl, but before I could step away, Nikolai's hand landed possessively at the small of my back. "Ms. Collins is under my personal protection," he stated in a tone that dropped the temperature of the entire restaurant by several degrees. "A fact I suggest you remember, Baranov." The warning was unmistakable, turning the air between them electric with potential violence. After the men departed with thinly veiled threats disguised as pleasantries, Nikolai escorted me to his private office in the back of the restaurant. "They'll be watching you now," he said bluntly, running a hand through his dark hair in a rare display of agitation. "Why would you say that?" I demanded, fear and confusion making my voice sharper than intended. "Why tell them I'm under your protection, when all I did was help you one time?" The implications of being publicly connected to Nikolai Petrov in front of what were clearly rival criminals made my stomach twist. He moved suddenly, closing the distance between us with that same fluid grace that seemed at odds with his powerful frame. "Because you are," he stated, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "You helped me when no one else would have. That means something in my world." The raw sincerity in his voice caught me off guard, making it difficult to maintain the anger that had been building. "I have a daughter to think about," I reminded him quietly. "I can't be involved in whatever this is." I gestured vaguely, encompassing him and everything he represented. A shadow crossed his features at the mention of Mia. "That's precisely why you need protection now. Baranov saw an opportunity to get to me through you." His hand reached up, hesitating before gently tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. "I don't pretend to forget kindness, April. Not anymore." The whispers started the moment I arrived at work the next day, sidelong glances and hushed conversations that died when I approached. Everyone had seen Nikolai's public declaration of protection, and in their world, that meant something far more significant than simple gratitude. "They think I'm his new girlfriend," I confided to Rose that evening, after tucking Mia into bed. "The staff keeps asking about the boss like I have some special insight now, and customers are treating me differently too." I didn't mention the expensive watch that had been delivered to my apartment that morning. Rose's eyes widened with a mixture of concern and excitement. "April, men like Nikolai Petrov don't just offer protection to random employees who help them out once. There must be more to it." Her words echoed my own unspoken thoughts that had kept me awake the previous night. The restaurant phone rang unusually early the next morning, with Nikolai's second-in-command requesting I bring Mia to work after school. "The boss wants to meet her," he stated, leaving no room for refusal. "Car will pick you both up at 3:30. The line went dead before I could argue. My stomach twisted with anxiety as I waited outside Mia's school, debating whether to run, to call in sick, to do anything but introduce my innocent daughter to the dangerous world I'd accidentally stepped into. The sleek black SUV arrived exactly on time, its driver expressionless as he held the door. "Mommy, is this the man who gave you the princess clothes?" Mia whispered as we entered the restaurant through a private entrance I'd never used before. Her perceptiveness sometimes startled me. She noticed far more than I gave her credit for. Nikolai was waiting in his office, and for the first time since I'd met him, he appeared genuinely nervous. The intimidating crime lord who struck fear into hardened criminals was standing awkwardly, a wrapped gift in his hands, and uncertainty in his usually confident posture. Mia, fearless in the way only children can be, marched right up to him and extended her small hand. "I'm Mia Collins. Are you my mommy's new friend? You're very tall." Her directness seemed to catch Nikolai off guard, a hint of a genuine smile touching his lips as he shook her hand with surprising gentleness. "Yes, I am your mother's friend," he replied, crouching down to her level with fluid grace that belied his powerful frame. "My name is Nikolai, and I wanted to thank you for sharing her with me the other night when she helped me." The sincerity in his voice was unmistakable, even to my skeptical ears. Mia studied him with the unfiltered assessment only children possess, then nodded as if coming to an important decision. "You look sad in your eyes like Mommy used to before we moved here. Are you lonely too?" Her innocent question landed like a physical blow, causing Nikolai to actually flinch. His ice-blue eyes flickered to me briefly, vulnerability flashing across his features before his composure returned. "Sometimes," he admitted quietly, offering the wrapped package to Mia. "I heard you like to draw, so I thought you might like these." Inside was a professional-grade art set that would have cost me at least a month's rent, the kind Mia had admired in store windows, but I could never afford. Her squeal of delight echoed through the office as she launched herself at Nikolai in an impulsive hug that visibly startled him. I watched in amazement as New York's most feared man awkwardly patted my daughter's back, his expression a complex mixture of pleasure and uncertainty. It was the most human I'd seen him, this glimpse behind the mask he presented to the world. "Mr. Petrov, Baranov's men have been spotted across the street," his security chief interrupted from the doorway, tension radiating from his rigid posture. They've been photographing everyone entering the building, including Ms. Collins and her daughter. Nikolai's transformation was instantaneous and terrifying. The gentle man who'd been crouching with my daughter vanished, replaced by cold fury as he issued rapid commands to his security team. Get them into the panic room now. No one enters or leaves until I return. The panic room turned out to be a luxurious apartment above the restaurant I hadn't known existed, stocked with everything from children's books to my favorite brand of tea. He's been preparing for you, noted his housekeeper, a grandmotherly woman who introduced herself as Mrs. Belova. We remained there for 3 days while Nikolai handled what he only referred to as the Baranov situation, with Mia surprisingly content thanks to her new art supplies and the endless patience of Mrs. Belova, who taught her to make traditional Russian pastries in the well-appointed kitchen. On the evening of the 3rd day, Nikolai finally appeared, looking exhausted but satisfied as he announced it was safe for us to return home. Though I'd prefer if you stayed, he added quietly when Mia was distracted, the request hovering somewhere between professional concern and personal desire. Why me? I finally asked the question that had been burning inside since that first night, standing close enough to catch the faint scent of his cologne. You could have anyone, Nikolai. Models, socialites, women who actually belong in your world. Why are you doing all this for a single mom from Queens? His expression softened, in a way I'd only seen when he looked at Mia. Because you saw me, the real me, not the reputation or the power or the money. You helped me without wanting anything in return. His hand reached up, hesitating before gently brushing my cheek. And Mia? I pressed, trying to ignore the warmth spreading from his touch. Is she part of this, whatever this is? Because she has to be my priority. Always. The unspoken warning was clear. I wouldn't allow my daughter to become collateral damage in his dangerous world. Something like respect flickered in his eyes at my protective stance. Mia reminds me of someone I lost long ago. My little sister Anya. She had the same fearlessness, the same ability to see through people's masks. Pain laced his words, revealing a wound that clearly hadn't healed. What happened to her? I asked gently, watching as shadows darkened his expression. The restaurant hummed with activity below us, but in that moment, it felt like we were the only 2 people in the world. Nikolai turned away, staring out the window at the Manhattan skyline glittering beyond. She died during a rival family's attack when I was 17. I couldn't protect her then, but I built all this to make sure I could protect the people I care about now. The vulnerability in his confession cracked something open inside me. Mia's father was my professor in college, married, powerful, with friends in high places. When I got pregnant, he threatened to destroy my future if I didn't handle it quietly. The words tumbled out, secrets I rarely shared. He denied her publicly, told everyone I was lying for money when I refused to get an abortion. The old pain surfaced as I continued. Then he made sure I was expelled, claiming I'd traded sexual favors for grades. No one believed me over him. Nikolai's expression darkened dangerously. His name? He asked, his voice deceptively soft. The predator that lurked beneath his controlled exterior was suddenly visible, sending a shiver down my spine despite knowing his anger wasn't directed at me. It doesn't matter anymore, I said firmly, touching his arm to draw him back from whatever violent path his thoughts were taking. We built a life without him. Mia doesn't need someone forced to acknowledge her. She deserves people who genuinely want to be in her life. The touch seemed to anchor him, his focus returning to my face with an intensity that made my heart race. And what about you, April? What do you deserve? The question hung between us, loaded with implications neither of us was quite ready to voice. I didn't have a chance to answer, as Mia burst into the room, proudly carrying a plate of misshapen but lovingly made Russian tea cookies. Mrs. Belova said these are your favorite, she announced to Nikolai, whose expression transformed instantly into genuine delight. 3 weeks passed in a strange new normal, Nikolai becoming an increasingly regular presence in our lives, appearing at my apartment with takeout food or surprising Mia with art museum tickets. The dangerous crime lord showed a different side with us, thoughtful, sometimes even playful. My co-workers now treated me with a mixture of fear and respect, while Nikolai's associates watched our developing relationship with calculating eyes. I tried to convince myself we were just friends, ignoring the electricity that sparked whenever we touched, and the way his gaze followed me across rooms. What I couldn't ignore was the increasing security presence around us. The men who casually appeared whenever Mia and I left the apartment. The new doormen, in our previously doorman-less building, the subtle but unmistakable surveillance that followed us everywhere. Something was happening that Nikolai wasn't telling me about. My suspicions were confirmed when I arrived at work to find the restaurant closed for a private event, and Nikolai waiting with tense lines etched across his face. "We need to talk," he said without preamble, leading me to his office where maps and surveillance photos covered his usually immaculate desk. "Baranov wasn't working alone," he explained, pointing to images of men I didn't recognize. "They've been targeting my businesses, my people, and now they're watching you and Mia. Someone close to me is feeding them information, and until I find out who, you're both in danger." I felt the blood drain from my face as he showed me photos clearly taken outside Mia's school. "We need to leave the city," I whispered, maternal instinct overwhelming everything else. "I can take Mia somewhere they can't find us until this is over." Nikolai shook his head, frustration evident in the tight set of his shoulders. "They'd find you within days. The only way to protect you both is to keep you close, to bring you into my home permanently, where my security can watch over you 24 hours a day." "You want us to move in with you?" I asked incredulously, thoughts racing at the implications. "Nikolai, that would only confirm what everyone already suspects, that we're together. It would make us an even bigger target, not to mention what it would do to Mia's sense of stability." He moved closer, intensity radiating from him in waves. "April, I'm not asking this lightly. If there was another way to keep you both safe, I'd take it." His hands gripped my shoulders gently but firmly. "I can't lose anyone else I care about. I won't." The confession hung in the air between us, neither of us quite ready to acknowledge the deeper meaning behind his words. Before I could respond, a commotion erupted outside the office. Raised voices followed by the distinctive sound of breaking glass. Nikolai pushed me behind him instinctively as his security chief burst through the door, blood streaming from a cut above his eye. "It's Carson," he panted, naming Nikolai's longtime financial advisor. "He's been working for them all along. They just tried to take out our entire upper management at the downtown meeting." The betrayal of someone Nikolai had trusted for years seemed to hit him physically, his posture stiffening as he absorbed the news. "Where is he now?" he asked, his voice dropping to the dangerous quiet I'd come to recognize as his most lethal state. "We have him contained at the warehouse," his security chief replied, wiping blood from his face. "But Baranov's people are moving on all fronts. They know about Ms. Collins and her daughter. Carson told them everything. There's a team headed to her apartment building right now." Pure terror seized me at the realization that Mia was at home with Mrs. Belova, who had been watching her after school while I worked. "Nikolai, please," I whispered, clutching his arm with desperate fingers. "Mia." He was already moving, barking orders into his phone as he pulled me toward the private elevator. "Team Alpha to Collins' apartment immediately. Secure the child and Mrs. Belova. Lethal force authorized if necessary." The cold efficiency of his commands should have frightened me, but I felt only gratitude for his decisive action. The 20-minute drive to my apartment was the longest of my life, my heart hammering so loudly I could barely hear Nikolai's continued stream of commands and status updates through his phone. When we finally screeched to a halt outside my building, the scene that greeted us froze my blood. 2 black SUVs with shattered windows sat abandoned in the street, while men in tactical gear secured the perimeter of my modest apartment building. Nikolai's security chief approached as we exited our vehicle, his expression grim as he reported, "We got here just in time. Baranov's men were already inside, but we've secured the apartment. The girl and the older woman are safe." I collapsed against Nikolai in relief, my knees weakening at the knowledge that we'd almost been too late. His arm wrapped around me automatically, supporting my weight as he continued issuing commands with cold precision, reorganizing his entire operation in the wake of Carson's betrayal. Mia was unharmed, but terrified, clinging to Mrs. Belova with wide, tearful eyes when we entered the apartment. The moment she saw me, she launched herself into my arms with a sob that broke something inside me, the illusion that I could keep my daughter separate from the dangerous world Nikolai inhabited. "We can't stay here," Nikolai stated the obvious, surveying the apartment with critical eyes as his security team secured the perimeter. "Pack whatever is essential for you both. My penthouse is the only place I can guarantee your safety now." Within 2 hours, we were settled into Nikolai's massive penthouse, Mia asleep in a guest bedroom that his staff had somehow managed to outfit with children's furniture and toys in our absence. The events of the day had exhausted her, but I remained wired with adrenaline, pacing the living room as Nikolai spoke in hushed tones with his security team. When they finally departed, leaving us alone in the vast space overlooking Manhattan's glittering nightscape. Nikolai poured 2 glasses of vodka and handed one to me without a word. The fiery liquid burned down my throat, but I welcomed the sensation. Anything to dull the terror that had gripped me since hearing Baranov's men were targeting my child. "I never wanted this for you." Nikolai finally broke the silence, his voice rough with emotion I hadn't heard before. "I thought I could keep you safe by keeping you close but separate. I was wrong." The self-recrimination in his tone made me look up from my glass. In the soft lighting of his living room, with the armor of his public persona stripped away, Nikolai looked younger and more vulnerable than I'd ever seen him. "This is my fault," he continued, running a hand through his dark hair. "I brought this danger to your door the moment I allowed myself to care about you." "I'm not exactly blameless," I countered softly, setting down my glass to move closer to him. "I could have walked away after that first night. I chose to stay, to let you into our lives." The realization struck me with sudden clarity. At every juncture, I had made conscious choices that led us here. Nikolai's ice-blue eyes met mine with startling intensity. "Why did you?" he asked, the question hanging between us like a physical thing. "Why risk everything for someone like me?" The answer rose to my lips before I could overthink it, truth spilling out in the safety of this suspended moment. Because beneath everything, the power, the danger, the control, I saw someone who was just as lonely as I was. Someone who built walls for the same reason I did, to protect a heart that had been broken too many times. Something shifted in his expression, a crack in the careful control he maintained at all times. "My father was high-ranking in the organization before me," he began hesitantly, as if unaccustomed to sharing personal history. "He taught me that emotion was weakness, that compassion would get me killed in this world. The night my sister died, he was more concerned about the business implications than her loss. He made calls about territory disputes while her body was still warm." Nikolai's voice remained steady, but his knuckles whitened around his glass. "I swore then that I would take everything from him, build something stronger, and never become what he was. And now?" I asked, suddenly aware of how close we were standing, the warmth of his skin beneath my palm, the way his eyes had darkened as they held mine. "What do you see when you look at me, Nikolai?" His free hand came up to cup my face with surprising gentleness, thumb tracing the curve of my cheekbone. "Everything I never thought I could have," he whispered, the confession barely audible even in the quiet room. "A chance at something real in a life built on illusions and fear." The kiss when it came was gentle, tentative, so unlike the powerful man the world knew, but perfectly in keeping with the person I'd glimpsed beneath the armor. My hand slid up to his shoulders as I responded, the contact sending electricity through my veins and chasing away the lingering chill of fear the day had brought. "Stay with me," he murmured against my lips when we finally broke apart, both breathing unsteadily. "Not just because it's safer, but because I want you here, both of you." The vulnerability in the request made my heart contract painfully in my chest. Our new life settled into an unexpected rhythm over the next month. Mia attending an exclusive private school with discreet security, me working remotely for Nikolai's legitimate businesses, and the 3 of us forming something that began to feel remarkably like family. Baranov had gone suspiciously quiet, which Nikolai's security chief warned was more concerning than open hostility. The other shoe dropped on a crisp autumn morning when Nikolai received a phone call that drained the color from his face. "They've taken Carson's family," he explained after hanging up, tension radiating from his rigid posture. "Wife, 2 teenage kids, hostages to ensure our mutual destruction. For all Carson's betrayal, his family was innocent." And I saw the weight of that knowledge in Nikolai's eyes as he prepared to leave. "Stay in the penthouse with Mia," he instructed, checking his weapon with practiced efficiency. "Triple security is already in place. I'll be back tonight." I hadn't expected how easily I would slip into the role of waiting at home, worrying over a man who walked into danger by choice. The hours crawled by as Mia and I baked cookies in the state-of-the-art kitchen, my phone clutched in my hand awaiting any update from Nikolai or his team. Night fell with no word, the city lights creating patterns across the penthouse floor as I paced, too anxious to sleep despite Mrs. Belova's reassurances. "He has always returned before," she said confidently, her weathered hands patting mine. "The boy is too stubborn to die." The call when it finally came wasn't from Nikolai, but from an unknown number, the voice on the other end unfamiliar and coldly amused. "Ms. Collins, I believe I have something that belongs to you." Baranov's accent curled around the words like smoke, freezing the blood in my veins. "If you want to see your boyfriend alive again, You'll come alone to the address I'm about to text you. No police, no security, just you." He paused, allowing the implications to sink in. "You have 1 hour before I start removing pieces of him to send to you." "We're mobilizing everyone, Ms. Collins," the security chief assured me, his voice tight with controlled urgency. "But it will take time to locate them. Baranov's using jammers to block all signals from the area." The unspoken message was clear. They wouldn't find Nikolai in time. "I need to borrow your car," I told Mrs. Belova quietly, after ensuring security was watching over Mia. "And I need you to wait 30 minutes before you tell anyone I've gone." The older woman studied my face with shrewd understanding before pressing her keys into my palm. "He would burn down the world to protect you and the little one," she said simply, her weathered hand squeezing mine. "Remember that when you face the devil tonight." Her calm certainty steadied me as I slipped out through the service entrance she directed me to. The warehouse district loomed dark and foreboding as I parked several blocks away, adrenaline making my movements jerky as I followed the directions on my phone. 2 armed men emerged from the shadows as I approached, roughly searching me for weapons or tracking devices before escorting me inside. Baranov was exactly as I had imagined him, expensively dressed, coldly calculating, with the casual cruelty of someone who viewed people as disposable pieces on a chessboard. "The famous April Collins," he greeted me with mock civility. "The woman who brought New York's most feared man to his knees." Behind him, Nikolai was secured to a chair, his face battered but his eyes widening in horror when he saw me. "April, no," he rasped, struggling against his restraints. "Get out of here." The naked fear in his expression was for me, not himself, and it strengthened my resolve rather than weakening it. "Let him and Carson's family go," I demanded, turning back to Baranov with more courage than I felt. "You have me now, the leverage you really wanted. Use me to negotiate whatever terms you want with his organization." The gamble was calculated. I'd overheard enough to know Baranov wanted Nikolai's empire, not just his death. Baranov's eyebrows rose slightly, genuine surprise flickering across his features before calculating interest took its place. Interesting proposition. The woman Petrov loves in exchange for territory and peace? He circled me slowly, assessing. His men might indeed value you enough to make concessions they otherwise wouldn't. They won't, Nikolai snarled, blood dripping from his split lip as he renewed his efforts to break free. "My organization has strict protocols. No negotiations with hostage takers, no matter who the hostage is. Kill me if you must, but let her go. She has a child who needs her." The mention of Mia made Baranov pause, something unreadable crossing his features. "A child," he repeated thoughtfully, turning back to me. "You came here knowing you might leave your daughter an orphan? That's either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish." I lifted my chin, meeting his gaze steadily. "I came here because I believe in my heart that you're not the monster Nikolai thinks you are. You have children of your own, don't you, Mr. Baranov?" The shot in the dark hit its mark, his slight flinch confirming my intuition. "This feud has gone on too long," I continued, taking a careful step toward him. "Both of you have built empires. Both of you have people who depend on you. How many more innocents need to suffer because neither of you is willing to find another way?" A tense silence fell over the warehouse, broken only by Nikolai's ragged breathing and the distant sounds of the city beyond its walls. Baranov studied me with new intensity, reassessing whatever he'd initially assumed about me. "You truly believe peace is possible between our organizations?" Before I could respond, the warehouse doors burst open, armed men flooding the space with practiced efficiency, but they weren't Nikolai's men. A woman stepped through their midst, elegant and steel-spined, her resemblance to Baranov unmistakable. "That's enough, Victor," she stated with quiet authority. "What are you doing here, Irina?" Baranov demanded, genuine shock replacing his calculated control. "This is business. You shouldn't be involved." The woman, his wife, I realized, ignored him completely, her attention focused on me with unsettling intensity. "So you're the one," she said, moving closer with graceful steps that belied the danger she radiated. "The woman who made Nikolai Petrov remember he has a heart." There was no mockery in her assessment, only a strange respect that made me stand straighter under her scrutiny. Irina Baranov turned to her husband with cold fury barely contained. 3 months of this pointless war, Victor. Our children living in safe houses. Our business partners deserting us. And for what? Pride? She gestured sharply to Carson's terrified family huddled in the corner. "Now you threaten children? This isn't the man I married." Something shifted in Baranov's expression. Not weakness, but a recalibration I recognized from watching Nikolai in moments of unexpected clarity. What would you have me do? Surrender everything we've built? The question held genuine uncertainty rather than challenge. I would have you remember why we built it, she replied with surprising gentleness, touching his face with familiar intimacy. For our family, for security, not for power that turns you into someone our children wouldn't recognize. Nikolai watched this exchange with wary confusion, his eyes darting between the Baranovs and me as the dynamic in the room transformed. What game are you playing, Victor? He demanded, still struggling against his restraints. If you're going to kill me, just do it. Leave April out of this. Irina approached Nikolai, fearless despite his reputation. No one is dying tonight, she stated with the certainty of someone accustomed to being obeyed. This ends now, before the authorities connect either of you to Carson's disappearance and dismantle everything you've both built. The next hours passed in a surreal negotiation that reshaped the criminal landscape of New York City. Territory divided, agreements made, with Irina and me as unlikely mediators between two powerful men who had forgotten there were options beyond destruction. Carson's family was released with guarantees of safety, provided he served his sentence for betrayal by permanent exile. Dawn was breaking as we finally emerged from the warehouse, exhaustion weighing on all of us, but a fragile peace established. Nikolai's arm wrapped possessively around my waist, his body still tensed as if expecting a last-minute betrayal. But Baranov merely nodded curtly before departing with his wife. You could have been killed, Nikolai murmured once we were alone in his car, his fingers tracing my face as if reassuring himself I was truly unharmed. Why would you risk everything like that? Mia needs you. The confusion in his question revealed how thoroughly I had upended his understanding of the world. I covered his hand with mine, turning to kiss his palm. Because you needed me too, I answered simply, and I couldn't bear the thought of a world without you in it. The admission cost me nothing. Somewhere during the past months, this complicated, dangerous man had become essential to my happiness. Something broke open in Nikolai's expression, the last walls crumbling as he pulled me closer. I love you, he whispered against my hair, the words clearly unfamiliar on his tongue but no less sincere for their newness. I've never said that to anyone since Anya died. 6 months later, Nikolai's business empire had transformed, legitimate ventures expanding while shadier operations were gradually dismantled. The peace with Baranov held, strengthened by monthly dinners that had evolved from tense obligations to something approaching genuine respect between former enemies. Mia flourished in our new life, her artistic talents nurtured by the best teachers and her natural compassion touching everyone around her, including Nikolai, who consulted her with adorable seriousness about everything from his wardrobe choices to business decisions that affected families in the community. The ring appeared one evening as we watched the sunset from our rooftop garden, a simple solitaire that caught the fading light as Nikolai held it between us. I'm not asking because of what happened, or out of gratitude, or because it makes practical sense, he began, uncharacteristic nervousness in his voice. I'm asking because you made me believe in second chances, he continued, taking my hand. You showed me it's possible to rewrite your story, to become someone worthy of the love you never thought you deserved. The man kneeling before me bore little resemblance to the cold crime lord I'd found bleeding on my car that night. We've created something neither of us thought possible, he said, ice blue eyes warm with emotion he no longer tried to hide. A family built on choice rather than obligation, on healing rather than hurting. Will you marry me, April? Not to solidify an alliance or protect an empire, but because I want to spend the rest of my life being the man you helped me become. My answer was witnessed only by the setting sun and the child who danced excitedly behind the rooftop door, thinking we couldn't see her spying. The future stretched before us, not perfect or without challenges, but infinitely brighter than either of us had dared to imagine before fate brought us together that rainy night in Manhattan. The transformation was complete. Not just Nikolai's evolution from feared crime lord to a man capable of love and compassion, but my own journey from defensive single mother to someone who could trust again. We had saved each other in ways neither of us expected, proving that sometimes the most powerful redemption stories begin in the most unlikely moments. Thank you all for following this story of unexpected connection and second chances. If you enjoyed it, please write in the comments where you're watching from. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video, as your support is essential for me to continue creating these emotional journeys for you.